It's catch-ups with our AFLW stars down under time again, and this time we're heading to Sydney for the first time, and we're chatting to Brid Stack. Brid, thanks a million for coming on.
No bother, Mike. How are you?
I'm very good. How's everything going down there in Sydney?
Good, good. The weather is starting to pick up. So yeah, we're hopefully finished with La Nina or whatever the hell that phenomenon was because yeah, we were rained out of it for I suppose a lot of the preseason and even up to last weekend and even yesterday. Yesterday was horrendous day of rain. So definitely reminds you of home anyway.
Yeah, I saw that. Geez, some of the conditions you were training in and some of the floods around Sydney were crazy there across the last couple of months. And it's pretty chilly here at home now, as you can tell. I have the jacket on. There's no heating going on here at the moment. Incidentally, is Australia affected by this energy crisis and this cost of living crisis, or are you slightly immune from that down there at the minute?
Yeah, well, I suppose I feel like I am maybe slightly a bit immune. Yeah, like there's definitely a rise in the cost of living here. And I know just even some of my teammates, there's, one or two of the girls that are actually looking to buy. They're kind of at that stage in their life where they want to buy, and just some of the numbers that are coming out of Sydney are just exorbitant, So I suppose for any young homeowner trying to get on the ladder, it's difficult no matter where you are in the world.
For sure. Now, look, I know Ogie's probably pottering around there somewhere and he may make an appearance. And if he does, that's brilliant. But you had a feast of birthday parties last year. Ogie was 3 years old. Just thinking back, when you started seriously looking at this, heading over to AFLW and we were having kicks around Cork, Ogie was shuffling along the ground on his bum. He's 3 years old now. Like he's literally grown into a young boy in Sydney. It's amazing, isn't it?
I know it's unbelievable, and I suppose yeah, I definitely remember those kick arounds with you, on a very cold Ballincollig or out by the farm, and yeah, I like to think of how much he has developed and grown, and I suppose I have to be very thankful of that the adventure that we're after giving him, for a couple of years, it's been unbelievable, and I suppose even thinking back to the very first time we landed in Australia, even to think that we had to do hotel quarantine, it seems like a lifetime ago that we had to do hotel quarantine, where I suppose the COVID I suppose pandemic has passed by us now. And, to think that he celebrated his third birthday there a couple of weeks back is just mind blowing. And, he even knows the Giant song now, like he hums it along. And, it's unbelievable. He's been welcomed with massive open arms here as of, our whole family.
For sure, and he's definitely one of the giants at this stage, and probably one of the most travelled 3 year olds in the world in terms of air miles and stuff. Any hint of an Aussie accent coming in there, or is yourself and Auntie Cora and all the giants keeping him straight?
Yeah, he actually has a mix now of an Aussie, an American, and an Irish accent, like all in one. Where the American has gone, I'd say it's probably from a bit of YouTube or whatever. But yeah, a couple of days in the bog should straighten him out, like when we get home, So
That's
it'll
the
be fun.
job. Back to reality. So look at
He's on,
2020.
he's on about he's on about cafes and going to the local cafe for a croissant. I was like, oh boys, he'll have a plate of veg put in front of him by the two nanas at home. There'll be no croissants anyway coming
That's
his
it.
way when he gets home to Ireland.
That's fantastic. And look at 2022 so far as a year. Like it's been absolutely crazy. Obviously, you've had the 2 seasons in one year. There was all that uncertainty after season 2022, as we call it, as to what was happening next. It was tricky for everyone, but obviously even more so for yourself and Cork and Ogie there in terms of you're trying to do with a family and with a business. So that must have been a difficult time as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think for any player, even on their own, trying to organize things was very very difficult. And yeah, we certainly felt under massive pressure. I suppose as a family, trying to I can't be selfish anymore. I have a family to think about, and it wasn't just I suppose sorting myself out. There was a lot of logistics that needed to be panned out, but thankfully I have a very supportive husband in Cork, and the his brothers that are involved in the business are really really supportive, and thankfully we could make it work. I suppose we're up most nights here in Sydney after coming home from training, and we face into a couple of hours of work here with the business before going to bed, because you have to work the Irish hours. So there's a lot of logistics, and there's a lot, I suppose, that might be glamorized about being over in Australia and things like that, but it's very hard work, and it's hard juggling family life, certainly over here without a support system.
It definitely should be. And look at 2 seasons in one year. Did that make it any easier or any harder to make the decision to head back out?
I suppose maybe it made it a small little bit easier, the fact that there was a short turnaround. The fact that I suppose, you know, you weren't kind of letting all of the training load kind of disintegrate in space of, you know, 6 months, that you were kind of still fresh and you kind of still had a lot of the skills built up in the game. I suppose that made it a lot easier. I suppose the fact we weren't embedded in home for another 6 months, where everyone was getting used to seeing Ogie every day and things like that, probably made it a little bit easier. It was certainly of, you know, the couple of times now we've gone back, it was probably the easiest, to be honest, because you know, we weren't fully embedded, like I said, in home like we would have been in previous seasons. So yeah, I suppose, look, the turnaround definitely made it a little bit easier, but I suppose we never envisioned that we would be coming back without Alan initially. So you know, that was probably something very new. And I suppose when you look at last season and you saw that there was progress happening towards the end of the season, you wanted to see if this progress could be taken a bit further. And I suppose that was probably my main reason for coming back, seeing if I could improve and seeing if I could contribute to the team.
Yeah, and in terms of your own season and your own game, we'll quote Father Ted, which I know you're a fan of. I hear you're a ruckman now, Father. So how the hell did that come about?
Oh, don't ask me, because I haven't a clue. But yeah, I suppose, look, there was a lot of moving and shaking between the two seasons. Obviously, there was a lot of movement due to the expansion. There was 4 new teams involved, which meant that I suppose if players were to move, this was the time to move. Sydney wouldn't be blessed with a massive pool of players, so, you know, no matter what players you lose, it's always going to be very detrimental to your setup. And unfortunately for us, you know, we lost 5 mature players who had, you know, plenty of years of AFLW under their belt. We lost number 1 ruck, and we also lost our key ruck, who, you know, up to last season was, you know, the number 1 hit out in the competition. So I suppose when you're going into a new season without 2 very strong rucks, you're always going to be under a bit of pressure. But the Giants, in fairness, had recruited very well. They recruited Cambridge McCormick from Canberra, so she came in as a novice ruck, and then they recruited Fleur Davies from the Gold Coast. So Fleur was kind of ready to go. She was she would have been our taller ruck and our stronger ruck. And unfortunately, in pre-season, Fleur was one of the injuries that we sustained. So yeah, it just meant that there was a lot of movement that needed to happen. And unfortunately for me, I was put into the ruck at training one day and did well enough, but I did well enough against an already undersized ruck, you know what I mean? So it's very different at training than it is to going into matches. So I started out kind of just giving a chop out in the first game. And I suppose even just going back on that, like at the end of last season, I felt I was kind of getting more into the game. I was kind of coming out of my institution of Gaelic football and, you know, getting to grips with it a lot more. And I was so relishing the challenge of getting better as a back, you know, and especially as a half back. And I suppose in that first game, you know, I had a solid enough game in the backs, and had to give a chop out to Cambridge for 4 minutes just so she could get off the field, have her rest in a rotation, and I went into the ruck for 4 minutes. But the funniest thing was in that first game, I came up against one of the Moody sisters. So like they are just unbelievable rucks. Like I'd say she had about 1.5 foot on me. I'd say easily 15, 20 kgs on me. And when I went into the ruck, she kind of looked at me.
Where are you going?
Yeah, she was like, Brid, because I suppose the community is small and stuff like that. But she turned around to me and she was like, Brid, any chance you know who the other ruck is? And I was like, I don't know, Celine, but yeah, surprise. Yeah, I was like, I don't know, Celine, but I'll let you know if I find her. And for luck, it was something I probably didn't envision would happen, but I was happy to give a chop out for the team. But unfortunately for me, as the season went on, I seemed to get more and more time in the ruck and less time in the backs. So to be honest, it wasn't something I ever envisioned. Like you try to do well in there, but like it's a specialized position, and like I suppose like I'm still feel like I'm learning how to be a back, let alone how to go into a brand new specialized position. So I certainly found it very difficult. I found myself in vulnerable positions a lot, and it's very, very tough on the body. Like, you know, after last year, like you were getting hits in the half back line, but they're nothing like what you get inside in the ruck and I suppose around the contest. So definitely found it tough on the all confidence and tough on the body. And I wouldn't be a spring chicken either, so I suppose that wasn't great. I didn't have that in my back pocket. But look, you play where you're put for the team,
Of
and
course,
yeah. But look, thankfully in the last 2 games I've played more in the backs, which is great, and trying to play to my strengths. But yeah.
And yeah, look at you kind of covered it there. For, like earlier in the season, you were kind of saying you just got comfortable. You knew your role. You were a bit more confident. I was talking to Vicky here a couple of episodes ago as well, and she was saying the same. She was a bit quieter at the start until she got a bit more comfortable in the game. So you had kind of got to the position where you knew what you were doing effectively, and then you just thrown upon you. So I know, look at you've never shied away from a challenge, but it definitely threw the cat amongst the pigeons, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh, it definitely does. And yeah, I suppose, look, as I said, like I wanted to come back and wanted to try to improve myself as a back. And yeah, look, that's just the joys of sport. Like the team, unfortunately, was massively under strength in terms of the injuries that we sustained early on, and just meant that I had to go into a position as one of the taller players. I suppose we wouldn't be a very tall team anyway. Unfortunately, the players that we lost that went to expansion teams would have been some of our taller players. So look, that's just the nature of it, and I suppose you just have to play where you're put to help out a team.
And if we just look at season 7 in across the board now, I suppose you mentioned there was a change of coach. We'll chat about Alan in a second. There was a change of game plan, I suppose. Is that always going to take a bit of time to bed in then, as opposed to being an instant transition to a new style of play?
Yeah, like it is, I suppose, but at the same time, I suppose I'm not making excuses by any means, but like we suffered 7 season-ending injuries by round 2. So like in pre-season, and by round 2 we had suffered 7. 3 to 4 of those were within our midfield. So like you're trying to work a game plan with an understrength midfield, and like in AFLW, everything starts with the midfield. Everything around the ground starts with them. Centre bounce, if there's a contest anywhere in the ground, everything depends on having a strong midfield. So I suppose for me, I would have liked to have seen that. I suppose you play to the personnel that you have, but obviously, look, they're trying to roll with this game plan, but as the season went on, you have to change things because you just don't have the personnel to execute that. So it's a great game plan in theory, but unfortunately, we're just under strength as the season went on. It was very hard to execute it. So.
And of course, look, there was a few great wins there. And if you just look at some of the losses for the Giants, some of them were very narrow losses, including the game against the Bulldogs and the Eagles, very close games. And then it really was like Lions, Collingwood, Adelaide, Richmond, who've won 7 in a row. It really was the top 3 or 4 teams were the rest of the losses. So in general, it probably wasn't overall that bad, but I guess it mightn't feel it like a close loss is no bonus, I suppose. But
no.
At the end
I suppose the hard thing was the Bulldogs game. We literally had just played them the week before in a practice game and had gotten the better of them in a practice game. And it's just, I suppose, it's just frustrating that, you couldn't make it stick and we didn't take our chances on the day. Like I think we gifted them maybe 2 goals and we didn't convert 3 goals. So, it's all small margins in this thing. Yeah. And like they were just more experienced and, as I said, that first day you're trying to play to this new game plan. Everyone, in fairness, did try, but sometimes you need a bit more time together. You need a bit more time going through a game plan, and I suppose with the shortened turnaround, unfortunately, just it didn't pan out. And I suppose we really needed that win versus the Bulldogs because you were coming up against Brisbane in round 2. Like I suppose we competed very well with Brisbane for maybe half the game. But look, they're just animals. They're just absolute athletes, and there's a reason that they're flag contenders because they're just an unbelievable team. And I suppose that's the biggest difference I find is this season, like some of the, I suppose the weaker teams, you could call them, have probably been stretched a bit more, whereas like the top teams were very, very careful in retaining their talent. So like, we're probably in a more precarious position that we don't have this massive pool that they have, and they managed to hold on to all their their mature talent as well as getting in, you know, ready-made talent from their academies. So look, that's just the joys of it. I think it'll probably take a good couple of years for it to level out. I do think it will level out, but not for a couple of years.
And let's look at a few of the highlights of the season. I suppose you mentioned small margin there, the Hawthorn game, 4 seconds to go, Nicola Barr kicking a point there to win that one. Watching this live here at home, it was absolutely thrilling game. I'm sure it was a bit stressful to be playing, but that was a brilliant win, obviously, as well.
Yeah, sure it is. And like they're great games. And I suppose that was a home game. It was a home game in Henson Park. And, you know, we absolutely love playing in Henson Park. It's like a real community ground. It's a bit sunken and there's a massive kind of bank all around it. So it's a great atmosphere there. And there was a huge crowd at it. It was on at like 3:10 in the middle of the day on Sunday. So there was a massive crowd at it. And I suppose the crowd is brilliant. It definitely wills you on in those smaller community grounds. But yeah, it was great to get a win. Obviously, I think we kicked something like 10 behind. So,
Yeah.
you know, even that in itself, like the execution isn't there, but I suppose to grind out a win is very, very important for a group that's trying to build with so many young players. So that was a great win, obviously. And we did have great wins. You know, I suppose the win against Carlton was the first time that the club had ever beaten Carlton,
Yeah.
you know, in its history. So that was a huge bonus as well. But I suppose on the flip side of that, you're looking at these massive defeats to the big dogs, like, you know, and I suppose in previous years that they wouldn't have been as expensive. So it definitely shows the disparity between the top of the table and I suppose from the middle down.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it'll probably take a few seasons to level off, but it probably will. And of course, the Sydney Cricket Ground, the SCG, brilliant game there, the first Sydney derby as well. That was a great occasion and a great win, I'm sure, and to run out at the SCG.
Yeah, it was. And I suppose, look, we'd been to the SCG a couple of times in the last couple of years watching the Swans play. And we would be good buddies with Colin O'Riordan and Barry O'Connor. So they would have hooked us up with tickets a couple of times. And you know, we've often met up with them. So Colin actually came to the game and he says he was shouting first, but I wouldn't imagine he would as a Swans fan. But yeah, no, it was unbelievable. It's an unbelievable ground, unreal facilities to be even inside in the big dressing rooms. Like it's just class. And I suppose the exposure that the girls have to these huge stadiums and these grounds, and you know, long may it continue, and may that derby continue for many, many years to come, because it's a super occasion, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And look at the other thing about the stadiums from watching here at home, as well as the games are always better. The football's always better. It's always better to see AFLW in the stadiums. So the more games at big stadiums, the better. In terms of Sydney, obviously there's 2 teams there now, 2 FLW teams. Has that created a bit more of an AFLW buzz around the city? And on the flip side, then you touched on it earlier, that's probably diluted the talent pool a little bit further even.
Yeah, it has. And like I said, you know, there was a couple of our players that went across to the Swans. Yeah, and we lost our number 1 draft pick in Ali Marfet, our ruck, to the Swans as well. So yeah, that crosstown rivalry is definitely there, and you know, definitely added a lot of spice. There was a lot of girls fairly revved up for that match, like beforehand, and I suppose that's great to see, because it does remind you of home. Like, you know, if you're playing the near neighbours and you want to make sure that, you know, you stamp your authority on things. And I suppose as the older club, it was important for the Giants to get that win. And you know, in the week before it and leading up to it, you know, we had the Giants men, like some of the main players for the Giants men, come in and speak to us about the importance of legacy. And you know, I suppose they came in as the newer club to the Swans, who were the more experienced, more settled club in Sydney, and you know, they got absolutely walloped the first day, and you know, slowly climbed their way up, like, you know, to make it a good crosstown rivalry. So, you know, they spoke to us about the importance of getting your name on the first stamp, like, you know, and you know, that's brilliant to see, and you want to see that grit from the players. And you know, they know a lot, the girls, but they also, you know, relish the rivalry, which is super.
Brilliant. Now we're going to touch on the Fearless documentary, Disney Plus. Obviously, Giants featured heavily in that in every episode, and you featured heavily in it in the first episode. I know, chatting to you before, you hadn't watched it. I don't know if you've watched it yet, or if you're going to wait till you're home and done and dusted.
So yeah, I haven't gotten around to watching it. I suppose, look, there was a lot of hype about it before the season started, and I just wanted to set up my stall well and try to get off to a good start. And yeah, just it wasn't on my radar. I had to go to Melbourne, all right, for a bit of a premiere. Yeah, so like there was great hype about it. Apparently, like, it's been very well received, which is wonderful. Like, there was a lot of stress attached to it as well. Like last year, it was, you know, full on to be in that position. But I suppose looking back at it now, you know, when I do get a chance to watch it, I love that it has captured, I suppose, a time in the AFLW before it was what it is now, before it has seen, you know, this massive pay increase, before it has seen the expansion teams come in, and what it was, I suppose, as part-time players, I suppose all the sacrifices and effort that they had to make for it to become what it is. And no doubt in 5-10 years time, they'll be looking at a professional model and, you know, see where they came from. And I suppose on a personal level, I'm very thankful that I'll get to see Ogie at a snippet in his life, and something that I'm very grateful, like, you know, that he'll be forever young in it. So it's lovely.
Definitely. Look, it was a fantastic series, all 6 episodes, just that insight into AFLW, and for probably people that have just seen games before and didn't really see what went on in the background or have an insight into dressing rooms or the players or the teams or the coaches, it was brilliant. One of the things that did highlight, of course, was that, Jesus, those first couple of seasons, there was just challenge after challenge after challenge coming for the Giants year after year. But Al McConnell featured a good bit in it as well, of course. You know Al very well. I met him a couple of times in Melbourne. An absolute legend of a coach, brilliant person, really gives time to everybody, wants to know everyone on a personal level. It was fantastic to play under Alan, I'm sure.
Yeah. I suppose Alan was the instigator for me coming over in the first place. So I obviously have a huge relationship with Al. I still have a massive relationship with him. I meet up with him often, and he'd text after games or we'd ring after games. And I suppose especially going into the ruck, you know, I definitely asked his advice on a few things, which was wonderful. So he's a never-present, I suppose, source of help to me. He's a wonderful friend here, a wonderful mentor, and yeah, very, very grateful to have him this year, and very, very grateful that I was able to play under him last year. He taught me so much, and I suppose, yeah, like, look, there's 2 different styles in the space of 2 short seasons, and I suppose, you know, that's how things go. Like this is the professional business side of things. Like, you know, if you're not getting results, you know, someone else is going to try to come in, and that's just the way this business works. Whereas at home, I suppose, I had such stability in Eamon and knowing that for such a long period of time. So it's definitely different. And it's something that, you know, probably girls here just get very used to, you know, new coaches coming in every couple of years. So.
And look, we've been following your letters or your diaries to the Irish Examiner here at home as well across the last couple of seasons. They're absolutely fantastic read. Do you enjoy the writing? Because it's brilliant to read and like it's very insightful.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, like that. I'd be on Tony Lean a bit, like, yeah, and there's some days you'd be after a win, you might love to write about it,
of
but
course.
after a loss, you could be suffering a bit. But look, I suppose that's the side of it. Like, you know, you're not always going to have the rosy parts of it, and I suppose I'm very thankful that I had that success kind of at home, and now it's very important to see when there's kind of a bit of struggle, and how to get the most out of yourself, how to get the most out of the team when you're here. So yeah, I definitely enjoy them, and I suppose, you know, when I'm finished all this, it'll be nice to look back on them all and relive, I suppose, the good times and the not so good times, you know, because they're all important.
Yeah, and I think you probably had a book before you went to Australia to be written, but now there's definitely one. So if you're bored at any stage down the line in the next few years, I think we definitely look forward to that. Speaking of the future and not looking ahead to seasons or anything like that, the immediate future, now that season 7 has come to an end, what's the plan there for the family? A bit of relaxation, or is it get the hell out of there and back to Nana and Granddad as quick as possible?
I'd love to say that we could stay around for a bit, but yeah, we play round 10, and then I suppose you go through the natural exit meetings, sign off on medical, all that type of jargon, and then we have to head home to Ireland actually fairly immediately. Corac's sister Aveen is getting married in Clarny on the 11th of November, so we'll be home in the next two weeks, I suppose, which is lovely. So the Nan and Grandas already have the date circled, and you know, they'll be ready to throw another 2 birthday parties. So yeah. So yeah, sure. Look, that's it. Like, it's just, I suppose, look, that's the clash, and You know, obviously, look, you'd love to stay on, and you're coming into the summer here. And I think for any of the Irish girls now, there's a wonderful opportunity, you know, in the coming years that you finish the season and then maybe you have that little bit of time, you know, to actually embrace Australia and maybe do a little bit of traveling, which is wonderful, and enjoy the summer here and have that little bit of downtime without missing Christmas at home. And I think that's very, very important. So yeah, I suppose the change of season in general has been good in terms of how it works out for, you know, getting home for Christmas and things like that. Obviously, the flip side of that is that it is right smack bang in the middle of football. Yeah,
and the football, of course,
yeah. So, some very, very difficult decisions going forward for girls, no doubt. Like, you know, I've had my career at Cork, and thankfully I don't have to make that very difficult decision. So, yeah, I wouldn't like to be in their position going forward anyway.
No, and I think maybe within another season or two, when it goes fully professional, even more so. But definitely, yeah, one of the flip sides of the change of season has been the weather. We saw at a recent training session there, you had to come dressed up as what sport you'd play if you weren't playing AFLW, and Brid Stack came as a lifeguard. I'm assuming you're looking at being a lifeguard in Bondi as opposed to Garrettstown or somewhere like that.
Oh yeah, Bondi Rescue, yeah. And I like the ironic thing is that I'm not actually a great swimmer. So like the girls are actually just taking the piss out of me that like, geez, I wouldn't like to see you on duty anyway if there was a problem in one of the rips. So yeah, look, I suppose it's yeah, that happened the last week before round 10. And I suppose look, the club obviously had a disappointing season. There's no sugarcoating it. It definitely didn't go to plan. No one could foresee the amount of injuries that we had. No one could foresee that. I suppose games would have gone the way that they did. And look, that sport. Unfortunately, you have to take, you know, the bad with the good. And yeah, look, I suppose they were just trying to get a bit of connection and a bit of fun into the last week, and you know that was a good way to do it. It was great fun, and the only requirement was that you had to be able to train in it. So there was a lot of us training in unusual stuff. Yeah, one of the girls was actually wearing a swimsuit, so it was hilarious. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Brid, look, we could chat forever as always. It's brilliant catching up with you. You have a little man to get to bed there and stuff, so we won't delay you any longer. Thanks a million for taking the time to chat to us. Well done on getting another season in the bag, and we look forward to maybe catching up with you in Cork, and we might get Ogie out to a cafe for a coffee when you're back at home.
I hope, I hope
for a croissant, yeah. We line up.
To the good life now.
Looking forward to seeing you when you get home. Thanks so much again, and best of luck for the rest of your time in Sydney this year.
No bother. Looking forward to seeing you, Mike. Bye.